In the early pages of Genesis, a figure of immense power and mystery steps onto the world stage, only to vanish a few verses later. His name is Nimrod. The Bible tells us he's a descendant of Noah, calling him a mighty hunter before the Lord, and crediting him with building the first great cities after the flood, including the legendary Babel. But beyond those few tantalizing lines, the official text goes silent. Who was this man, really? How did he become so powerful that his name became a legend? For centuries, these questions have been left unanswered, leaving a huge gap in one of the most formative periods of human history. The Bible gives us a glimpse of Nimrod, but it's just that, a glimpse. It leaves us with far more questions than answers. But what if I told you there's an ancient controversial text, a book that claims to be the long-lost Book of Jasher mentioned in the Bible itself, that tells the entire story? Today, we're opening that book to uncover the forgotten details of Nimrod's life, his epic battles, and the unbelievable secret behind his legendary power. Sit back while I narrate to you the untold story of Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord, a detailed historical documentary brought to you by the Chronicles of Truth, where history, faith, and revelation converge to bring you the mysteries and forgotten truths that shaped our world. To understand how Nimrod rose so far, so fast, we don't start with his birth. We start with an object of almost unimaginable power, an artifact that the Book of Jasher claims was made by God himself, the garments of skin he made for Adam and Eve. Now, Genesis tells us that after the fall, God made these tunics of skin to cover them. But according to Jasher, this wasn't just about modesty. These garments held a latent power, a remnant of Eden's lost glory. While the Bible doesn't say what happened to them, the Book of Jasher lays out an extraordinary history. These sacred clothes were passed down from Adam to the righteous Enoch. Before Enoch was taken into heaven, he passed them to his son, Methuselah. Methuselah then gave them to his grandson Noah, who kept them safe on the ark through the great flood. And this is where the story takes a sharp turn. After the flood, while Noah was drunk and asleep in his tent, his son Ham went in. Genesis cryptically says Ham saw his father's nakedness, an act that led to a curse. But the Book of Jasher adds a scandalous detail. Ham didn't just look. He stole the sacred garments of Adam and Eve from his sleeping father. He knew their value, sensed their power, and he took them, hiding them from his brothers. Ham kept these garments secret for years, a hidden source of authority. Eventually, he passed them down to his firstborn son, Cush, and Cush, who loved his own son dearly, gave the garments to him. That son's name was Nimrod, a name that, according to Jasher, means rebel. The text of Jasher says that when Nimrod turned 20, he put on the garments, and the effect was immediate. Nimrod became strong when he put on the garments, and God gave him might and strength. This wasn't just about being physically strong. The clothes gave him a supernatural aura. Wild animals, even the most ferocious beasts, would see him and bow down, their aggression calmed by the power of Eden. This is the secret behind his title, a mighty hunter. He wasn't just a great archer. Creation itself bent to his will because he was wearing a piece of its original, unfallen state. This stolen power became the bedrock of his legacy. He wasn't a king by birthright. He was a king by the power of a stolen blessing, a leader whose entire reign was built on a holy relic used for unholy ambition. Fueled by the supernatural power of the garments, Nimrod's ambition quickly outgrew the hunting grounds. He saw a world that was fractured and afraid, and he cast himself as its protector. Jasher's account says he fought the battles of his brethren against all their enemies round about. Wherever there was a fight, Nimrod, cloaked in this divine power, brought victory. His military success was stunning. When he was 40, a war broke out between his family, the descendants of Ham, and their cousins, the descendants of Japheth. Nimrod led a small force of about 460 men against a much larger army. The garments worked their magic. Fear fell on his enemies, and he crushed them, returning not just with a victory, but with the spoils of war and the undying loyalty of his men. That victory sealed the deal. The Book of Jasher describes his coronation. All his brethren assembled to make him king over them, and they placed the regal crown upon his head. He was no longer just a warrior, he was a monarch. His fame exploded across the world. He established his capital in the land of Shinar, and, according to the Book of Jasher, he rose to become the first monarch to rule over all the descendants of Noah. He was more than just a warlord, he was an organizer. He founded the great cities of Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh. He appointed princes and judges, building a complex government to manage his empire. In a move that would prove critical, Nimrod promoted a man named Terah to be the prince of his host, the highest official in the kingdom. This is a crucial detail because Terah was the father of the man who would become Nimrod's greatest rival, Abram, later known as Abraham. But as Nimrod's power grew, his heart hardened. Jasher puts it bluntly, Nimrod did not go in the ways of the Lord, and he was more wicked than all the men that were before him. He became a despot who demanded his subjects worship idols of wood and stone, setting himself up as a god on earth. The unity he had created wasn't one of community, but of control, setting the stage for his most infamous project, the Tower of Babel. In Jasher's telling, this wasn't just a building. It was a weapon, a monument of defiance built to war against God and to ascend into heaven. In the Book of Jasher, the story of Nimrod is tangled up with the story of Abraham, setting up a dramatic clash between the world's first tyrant and the father of faith. And it all started on the night Abraham was born. According to Jasher, Terah, as the prince of Nimrod's host, was throwing a huge party for the king's inner circle. When the astrologers and wise men left that night, they saw a terrifying omen in the sky. A massive star rose in the east and seemed to swallow 4 other stars from the 4 corners of the horizon. Shaken, they ran to Nimrod. Their interpretation was dire. The son born to Terah that night would rise up, his descendants would inherit the earth, and they would destroy other kingdoms. They saw the baby as a direct threat to Nimrod's empire and gave him some brutal advice. buy the child from Terah and kill it. Nimrod, paranoid, agreed. He offered Terah a fortune for the baby. Terah, trapped, came up with a desperate plan. He took the child of one of his servants, born the very same day, and gave that baby to Nimrod instead. Nimrod, believing it was Abram, killed the infant thinking the threat was gone. Meanwhile, Terah took the real Abram, his mother, and his nurse, and hid them in a cave for 10 years. After a decade, Abram was sent to learn from the last of the old patriarchs, Noah and his son Shem. For 39 years, they taught him the ways of the one true God. When Abram finally returned to his father's house at the age of 50, he found it filled with the idols that Terah worshipped as part of Nimrod's state-sanctioned religion. Abram was furious. In a bold act of defiance, he smashed them all. When Terah demanded to know what happened, Abram sarcastically claimed the biggest idol had destroyed the others in a fight over an offering. Terrified of the king, Terah betrayed his own son and dragged him before Nimrod for judgment. What followed was an epic confrontation. Abram stood before the most powerful man on earth and called him a foolish, simple, and ignorant king. Enraged, Nimrod threw Abram into a fiery furnace. A massive crowd gathered to watch the execution. Abram's brother Haran was there with a divided heart. According to Jasher, Haran thought to himself, "If Abram survives, I'm with him. If the king wins, I'm with Nimrod." Because his faith was weak, when he too was tossed into the furnace, he burned instantly. But Abram, protected by God, walked in the fire for 3 days as the whole kingdom stared in shock. When he emerged without a scratch, Nimrod and his princes had to acknowledge a power far greater than their own. Yet, even after the miracle, Nimrod's heart stayed hard. He later dreamed of Abram attacking him with a sword, and again tried to have him killed. This forced Abram to flee, eventually leaving for the land of Canaan and setting in motion the next great chapter of biblical history. For decades, Nimrod's power seemed absolute, but the Book of Jasher says his downfall didn't come from a heavenly fire or a great army. It came from simmering jealousy and a chance encounter in the wilderness with another mighty hunter, Esau, the grandson of Abraham. As Esau grew up, he also became famous as a cunning hunter, a man of the field. A silent rivalry grew between the aging king and the young, powerful descendant of his old enemy. According to Jasher, a jealousy was formed in the heart of Nimrod against Esau all the days. He saw in Esau the echo of his own power, a strength born from the very bloodline the stars had warned him would one day rise against him. The tension finally snapped one day in the fields. Nimrod was out walking with 2 guards, separated from his main hunting party. Esau saw his chance and hid, waiting for the king to pass. As Nimrod drew near, Esau sprang from his ambush, drew his sword, and with a single powerful blow, cut off the king's head. The 2 guards rushed to fight him, but Esau, a fierce warrior, struck them down too. Nimrod's main force heard the dying cries and ran to see what was wrong, but they were too late. When Esau saw them coming, he fled. But he didn't leave empty-handed. In the chaos, he stripped Nimrod's body of the sacred garments of Adam and Eve, the source of all his power. Esau ran back to his family's camp, and Jasher provides a fascinating piece of context that sheds light on a famous Bible story. It says Esau arrived, wearied and exhausted from fight, and he was ready to die through grief. This is the state he was in, drained from his violent showdown with the king, when he stumbled upon his brother Jacob in a pot of lentil stew. In that moment of utter exhaustion and fear, when he cried out, "I am at the point to die, and what profit shall this birthright do to me?" he sold his birthright for a meal. His famous disregard for his inheritance was directly tied to the trauma of assassinating the world's most powerful man. Nimrod, the mighty hunter, died at the age of 215. He was killed, as Jasher puts it, by the sword of Esau in shame and contempt. The prophecy had come true. A descendant of Abraham was indeed his doom. With the tyrant dead and his source of power gone, Nimrod's great empire shattered almost overnight, crumbling back into the dust from which it came. The story of Nimrod is just one of many incredible, almost forgotten narratives found in ancient texts like the Book of Jasher, the Book of Enoch, the Book of Adam and Eve, and the Book of Abraham, just to mention a few. These accounts add a layer of depth and drama to the biblical world that you won't find anywhere else. The portrait of Nimrod from the Book of Jasher is a world away from the brief sketch in Genesis. It turns a historical footnote into a key player in the drama of the ancient world. He's a complex figure, a unifier who became a tyrant, a charismatic leader who was also a rebel against God, a man who wielded a stolen divine power only to defy its source. The Book of Jasher reveals the story behind the legend, sacred garments, stolen from a patriarch, that became the foundation of an empire. It gives us the story behind the man, a paranoid king whose fear of a prophecy led him into a lifelong battle with Abraham, the father of faith. And it gives us the story of his downfall, an ironic end where the mighty hunter becomes the hunted, killed by the grandson of his great rival. In the end, this version of Nimrod's story is a timeless cautionary tale. It suggests that power without divine purpose, no matter how great it seems, is built on sand. Nimrod built cities that reached for the heavens, but his legacy was one of rebellion and shame. Abraham built no cities, but his legacy of faith would go on to shape the world. The story of Nimrod is a powerful reminder that true strength isn't found in special garments or earthly crowns, but in a heart aligned with God. Thank you for watching. If you find these hidden histories as fascinating as we do here at the Chronicles of Truth, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. We look forward to seeing you in the next video.